Hello friends, this is a look in the dark, chapter 19, opening the lid. The world's a big place and there are thousands of species, millions of species of creatures that live on this planet. We're supposed to be caretakers, but often man exploits these in unreasonable ways. And some of these, even under human laws, are illegal. And that's what this novel's been about. This is chapter 19, as I said. And we start with the Chief Inspector planning his moves. Chief Inspector Royston Hutchins sat in his office looking down on the cars parked below. It would only be a couple more days, then the operation would take place. Of course, mostly it had been the work of the Metropolitan Police Wildlife Crime Unit, but he'd been promised that he and Bennet would have charge of the small part would to take them to the arrest of Stanhurst. He and Bennet had sat in on the briefing of the Wildlife Crime Unit the day before. At this stage only a few police officers knew the date. Operation Buzzard would begin on an early morning of the first week in September, the first Wednesday. He understood from his colleagues in the Wildlife Unit that international coordination had been organised on an unprecedented scale, and a very large number of individuals and locations were under surveillance. There had been great excitement at the time all the Ace Alliance documents were handed over to the Wildlife Branch of Policing. Hutchins knew little about wildlife crime, and most of his later professional life he'd been investigating murders and the more serious kind of armed robberies. Yet he felt there was something special about this, his involvement in this operation. It had always grieved him that in their greed humans had wiped out whole species of animals and birds, and that the web of animal crime that stretched round the globe seemed to be a war on whatever is moral and decent. And then there was the matter of Stanhurst, or Fuller, as his real name was. Hutchins knew that he'd killed people in cold blood, and that a number had been murdered ruthlessly on his orders, and some of them when he was inside. There'd been that awful thing with the poor girl thrown from the block of flats, that people had, and the way people had been too afraid to speak up. The evidence pointed at Stanhurst, and every cop involved had known it. But there was not enough evidence to satisfy the Crown Prosecution Service. London, and it seemed the world, would be all the better for having that individual locked up. Similar operations were taking place, Hutchins knew, in Rotterdam, Berlin, Moscow, Calais, Marseille, Barcelona, Istanbul, Odessa, Djibouti, Monrovia, Mombasa, Nairobi, Grenada, Puerto Rico, Rio de Janeiro, Buenos Aires, Los Angeles, Seattle, Quebec, New York, and across the globe. And they were just a few that had been contacted right at the start. Many had been added since. Hundreds of similar actions throughout Europe, Asia, Australasia, the Americas alone. This really was a worldwide police cooperative such as the inspector had never witnessed before. Over the years he'd really tried to be an honest cop. There'd been occasions when he would have liked a bit more power to arrest, but he knew well that the freedom of the individual was part of what he had to protect, and even criminals had to have some rights. And suspects even more so. A police state didn't appeal to him one bit, but he would have been very happy to see some of London's real hard men locked up for good. He was hoping that some of the people who were involved in this were also drug pushing, arms trading, and involved in the illegal immigrant trade. All these crimes had to do with living on human misery, and may well be connected to animal misery. So much human misery could be stopped, Hutchins was sure, if enough of these cruel and wicked men could be taken out of society. Bennet and he had recently investigated a terrible murder of two illegal immigrants and uncovered a whole web of tragedy involving underpaid workers, girls forced into prostitution, children sold into abuse. The police needed much more cooperation internationally because the criminals certainly cooperated across all national barriers. They didn't care about the misery they caused, and the worst part about that particular investigation was although they were pretty sure who the real villains were, the evidence only scooped up a few of the minor players, and to Hutchins' horror a number of the victims were now in custody and likely to be deported back to misery where they came from. Such was the sad plight of illegal immigrants. So here he was, protecting animals. Oh, all God's creatures, I suppose, he muttered as he stared blankly at the file on his desk. At this moment, as Inspector Hutchins put on his glasses and looked back out the window, Bennet entered the office with a large smile. Here it is, Gov. He held up a handful of papers. A complete list of all branches and activities of the National Geographic Council for Better Understanding. The inspector gave the sergeant a benevolent smile and nod. They have a branch in nearly every university town in Britain and a few in obscure places like Bodmin Moor and the Cairngorms. Why there? The information was put together by Polly Bignell, sir. She says that all the non-university locations are supposed to be for some kind of training purposes. Training for what? That we have to work out, sir, but apparently there will be raids on all these places whenever we make a move on the traders and customers, whenever we make our date with Stanhurst. Would you like to know when that is, Bennet? He removed the glasses again and gave the younger detective a frowned look. Of course I would. We don't spread it around in the canteen, Sergeant, but I would suggest you have an early couple of nights and be here bright and early on September the 5th. Wednesday, that is. I want you with me every inch of the way. We will, of course, have backup, and we may well need it with Stanhurst, but I want you and I to go in and face Major so-called evil Stanhurst with our evidence. I want you to share my pure joy of loading him into a car and knowing he will not be going on the loose in London for a long time. Then I want to take you out for a drink, Bennet, all right? Sounds like a perfect end to a perfect day, Gov, but I think I should buy you a drink this time. Well, we'll be able to celebrate, Bennet, but there are people on the list of customers that are going to shock Johnny public. We have a magistrate, a member of Parliament, a lord from Wales, a judge, the headmaster of a public school. Yes, Gov. And the man called Charles Bannister is the retired police officer you worked with, I think. Poor old Charlie Bannister. I thought it was. He was a caged tropical birdman back then. Oh well, he of all people should have known to be careful about what he was buying. You know, he retired from the rank of superintendent. That's what I thought. Him and I were constables in uniform at Exeter. Worked with him sometimes. Moody devil. He'll have plenty to be moody about now. Well, sir, he might have been a big cop, but he's one of the small fry on this list. He only brought a few small birds. I can't believe what I'm hearing from the wildlife lads. I mean, smuggling into Britain a small bird or two is one thing, but smuggling tigers and elephants' tusks would seem to be almost impossible. I know what you mean, Sergeant. I would find moving a tiger legally rather a challenge. I wonder at the human race. Anything at all for money. Glad we're going to be in on getting Stanhurst, and it'll be great to look up more of his kind, even the small fry, whoever they are, sir. The law is the law, just like you told your local vicar when he complained about getting done for speeding. Yes, Bennet, and it gives me pleasure to hear you repeat it. In this country, many people have thought they could get away with the very things they were hanging people for in the past, and for centuries they did just that. Part of our job is to administer the law impartially. It doesn't always happen, Sergeant, but it's important that we are not the reason it doesn't happen, and you're a good cop, Bennet. Thank you, sir. I never felt like that when you sent me to tell the Ace Alliance guy that was here. I failed that time, all right. Happens to us all sometimes. How do you think I felt when the jaw thief let the homing pigeon loose in Trafalgar Square? I almost had him, but the only evidence would be the Croft House bracelet. I was a yard from him when the bird flew out of his hand. Have you ever tried to watch one pigeon in Trafalgar Square? I knew that the bracelet was away to a prearranged pigeon loft somewhere. I knew the pigeon had the bracelet, and the thief knew that I knew, but there was nothing that I could do about it. Bennet had heard the story before, but he'd learned that it was worth listening to the Chief Inspector's stories, because each time he included a little more detail than the time before, and he was so animated as he told those stories. What was it you called that thief, sir? Diamond Dunkirk. I think that was where he came from. I don't remember his real name, Bennet. When he let that bird go, I knew he had me beat. We brought him in and I questioned him, and he just kept giving me this kindly smile all the way through the interview. Of course, he knew I wasn't able to connect him to the crime without the article. He also knew that even Scotland Yard could not chase after a pigeon. Ha! We should have used the flying squad. He was a charming chap, gentleman criminal really. There were a few of them. Pity for him, though. Where was that, sir? The younger police officer had not heard this part before. Well, Bennet, he left Britain for Ireland and he went on to Italy. He upset someone over there. The Italian police thought it might be the mafia. Poor Diamond Dunkirk was found with a bullet hole in the back of his head behind one of Roman's many statues. If only I'd got him before the pigeon left with the evidence, he would have still been in a British jail and would be alive today. Upsets me because he was one of the few crooks I arrested that I liked. Sad, don't you think? Yes, sir, you never told me that bit before. The inspector placed his glasses on his desk between some files and a cup of cold, untouched coffee. Point is, though, Bennet, we all fail sometimes. Forget it. Except you won't fall for that trick again. Would you still like to know who the Ace Alliance are, though? I sure would. Bennet and the inspector shared that in common. Their life was about unravelling mysteries, and they wanted to have the four aces revealed to them even if nobody else knew. What was happening at the Metropolitan Police Crime Unit, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds and Her Majesty's Custom and Excise, could be mirrored and echoed in many other countries. It was true that only a small portion of wildlife crime and smuggling is detected and is often a byproduct of drug raids. However, police forces and other interested bodies were given a lot of priority to this Ace Alliance investigation, and in fact careful observation using all manner of surveillance tactics had been used and increased the number of people around the world who would be arrested when the time came. Sue's careful decoding of records had told authorities where to look, and as they looked, all manner of other connections were being uncovered. The main problem in the coordinated effort around the world was to be manpower. In some lands the military would be enlisted, and in others it would be key criminals that would be apprehended, with follow-up raids afterwards. But there would be few lands where some involved in illegal wildlife trade would not be arrested at all. However, September the 5th would be as if the animals and birds had found a way to fight back at last. The operation had been given a new code name by the Wildlife Crime Unit at New Scotland Yard. The events of September the 5th would be named Operation Militaris. One of the officers there had come up with the name because the military macaw, Latin name Ara Militaris, was under threat of extinction in the wild, though in fact there is no major threat to the existence of them as pets, many being bred in captivity for that purpose. The commanding officer had liked the suggestion because of the military precision that was going to be involved in sweeping everything up with speed before too many could escape arrest. However, had he known the man in Rawmarsh, Yorkshire, who'd just come on his bicycle from work and who was admiring the Moluccan cockatoo he had added to his aviary, knowing that the bird was not coming with the proper certification, would have felt less comfortable knowing it would soon be confiscated and that his otherwise crime-free life would soon have a criminal record. The worries of two brothers not far from Totton in Hampshire, who'd given up farming to generate cash more readily by housing and transporting anything Major Stanhurst asked them to, dead or alive, imported illegally from all over the world, would have had even more serious things to worry about had they known that they'd been watched for days by Hampshire Constabulary surveillance team working with the same police force's wildlife crime officers. Men of the open air, these two, who had not been able to resist the temptation of large sums of money. The two brothers would soon have plenty of time inside to wish they'd stayed away from the Major and that they were still free outside. The impoverished estate of a certain minor Welsh aristocrat would become even more dilapidated while Sir Oscar spent 5 years as a guest of Her Majesty, because he had allowed his envy of Lord Bath to lead him to purchase exotic creatures illegally and add to his crime, and he cared for them very poorly to make it worse. Lord Bath and his associates would be pleased to see this particular-handed gent brought to the courts. Inspector Hutchins handed a file to the detective sergeant. "Believe in God, do you, Bennet?" "Yes, sir." "You know I do." The young policeman wondered what was coming. "Why?" "Because I look at it all. Nature, I mean. I just can't explain it without some kind of intelligence." "Quite, Bennet. If creation was a crime, we would have evidence all over the world." Hutchins put his glasses back on his face and looked his colleague in the eye. "Well, Sergeant, please pray that we gather a lot of these rotten people up, that Operation Militaris is a major policing success around the globe." "Oh, I will, sir." Sue was all dressed up. Her working-class hero father and her aristocratic friend didn't seem likely to hit it off in warm companionship, The well left of centre politics of Mr. Parry caused him to pull the shutters down once he heard an English upper-class accent. She knew that, and she was concerned that despite Sir Richard Claymore's good intentions, the evening would be a disaster. She was having second thoughts. It was not Ricky that she was worrying about. Her dad was causing her concern. Her mother was expecting problems too. As Sue came down the stairs just before they left, she'd been amused to hear her mother say, "Now listen, Bill, this evening's supposed to be a good night out. If you mess it up because you feel you have to deliver a revolutionary speech, well, don't expect me to cook you a Sunday roast." Stressed as she was, Sue had to pause on the stairs and laugh at that. Her father's response was predictable. "For goodness sake, Deb, do you think I'm stupid?" "Sometimes, yes. You don't know when it's best not to talk about politics. Sir Richard Claymore sounds a very decent kind of man to me, and we don't want to lecture on the exploitation of the poor, all right?" "All right, Deb. I'll not bring anything up, unless he does." "It's not that I don't agree, Bill. You know I agree with nearly all you say, but there's a right time, and this isn't it." Sue was thinking that she rarely heard her mother lay down the law to her father like this. More often he was the one to do that to the mother. She heard this tone from her mother as a child often, but aimed at her, not her dad. Her father responded in a different way too. "Hey Deb," he said, "you sure do look beautiful tonight. I'll be very proud to take you to the Dorchester Hotel, as long as he's paying for it all." "Bill Parry, you're a disgrace." But Deborah Parry was laughing too. Sue joined them in the living room, and very soon they were on their way in the taxi that Ricky had ordered to take them to the meal location. As they drove to meet Ricky for the meal, Bill Parry looked at his daughter and was very proud at the change in her. Those weeks in Somerset had transformed her. She was the same affectionate girl he'd always treasured, but this was a more confident version. Whoever the Greens were, they had helped her to be aware of her own worth. Now his thoughtful daughter had become self-assured, realising that to be a benefit to others she had to stand up and be counted herself. Sue returned her father's warm smile, and she leaned back in her seat, determined to enjoy the combination of her socialist father and a strongly anti-establishment aristocrat Ricky, despite all her reservations. 5 hours later, Sue and Debbie Parry sat tired but not hungry, trying to get a word in somewhere between the conversation of the two men. Bill and Ricky had joined forces in conspirational thought, ignited by slightly more alcohol than would allow clarity of thought. Several courses of excellent food, plenty of very good wine, and Ricky's praise of the hard-working Sue had evaporated in awkwardness like intense sunshine drying up a shallow puddle. At heart, the two men had become firm friends, and Bill's declaration as they enjoyed the last glass of wine at the hotel had left them leaving in noisy laughter. "Well, Sir Richard Claymore, Ricky that is." Bill placed his hand on Ricky's shoulders. "You're certainly a toff with a difference, and should you ever want to work for London Transport, I promise I'll put in a good word for you." Now, with Bill having insisted that his new friend come home in the taxi with them, they were seated in the Paris sitting room listening to the emotional strains of Ben Webster's saxophone playing Come Sunday, and it already had come. Bill Parry took out a bottle of whiskey he'd been keeping for a special occasion and fenced off Debbie's questions as to whether either or any of them needed any of it. "This is a special occasion, Deb. We're celebrating the mysterious victory that you and I know nothing about. We're also celebrating our daughter's..." Bill hesitated, unsure how to continue. Ricky stood up with a little difficulty. "We're celebrating your daughter's new employment. I'm looking forward to having Sue help as secretary come personal assistant on a permanent basis." Ricky looked at Sue, and she had not drunk enough wine to be cloudy-headed. She gave Ricky a nod and a smile. "I have a major project coming up, and anyway I need someone like Sue to get me organised." Now the Parrys knew the benevolent aristocrat. They were pleased to think of Sue working for him. "What will Sue be doing, Ricky?" Deborah Parry was curious. "Well, Deborah, old girl, I've been promising the family that I would sort out all the antiques, heirlooms and works of art. I don't live on the estate, but it's not far from Weymouth, and Sue will be able to stay on the estate somewhere. I have to sort that out with my brother yet." Ricky raised a glass of scotch to his lips. "Sue will not be so much working for me as with me, but I will draw up a proper contract. I will see she's well cared for. I have to say again, Deborah and William, your daughter is a credit to you. And though it's not best to tell you details when there is a major news story about animals soon, you will know that your Sue was a major player in uncovering the wickedness. It will be a pleasure to advance the career of such a capable and pleasant young lady. Also, as I'm a close friend of the Greens and so is Sue, we will be seeing them often and Sue can go and stay with them whenever she wants to. Sue looked at the clock after sipping a small glass of whisky. It was close to 2 a.m. She took her mother's hand. Come on, Mum, let's go to bed. Boys will be boys, we'll leave them to it. The boys were still there at 10 in the morning. And while Ricky slept peacefully on the sofa, Bill was snoring like a thunderstorm in one of the armchairs. Sue and her mother prepared breakfast, and when Debbie awoke the men with a cup of tea, she waved the nearly empty bottle at them and tutted loudly. Both men declined to make any defence, but they gave each other a knowing smile, as co-conspirators are inclined to do. So, new friends. One, a titled gentleman, the other a working class hero. It can happen. Also, the police forming their investigation round the globe with lots of cooperation. What comes next? That episode will follow very soon, but that's the complete chapter, opening the lid. Hope you like my hat. I've put it on to make you laugh. I'm sorry about the glare in my eyes. There are certain times in the day if I record, the laptop is a glare in my eyes and there's nothing I can do about it. I suppose it makes me look brighter than I am. Nice to share that with you, my friends. Love and peace to all of you. Next episode coming your way soon. Bye for now. Bye bye.